15 ugliest stars who were made beautiful. They lit up movie posters, dominated magazine covers, and became the very definition of beauty for entire generations. But here's the truth Hollywood doesn't want you to know. Its most glamorous icons weren't born flawless. They were manufactured by a system so brutal, so unforgiving, it would leave today's audiences stunned. Behind every perfect smile and every seemingly effortless pose lies a dark, uncomfortable reality. Many of Hollywood's most celebrated beauties were once dismissed as unphotogenic, unmarketable, or even ugly before the studio machine remade them. These weren't simple makeovers or clever lighting tricks, these were complete transformations. Painful surgeries, extreme diets, grueling training regimens, and relentless psychological conditioning. All designed to sculpt them into the vision of perfection the silver screen demanded. The price? Their health, their identity, and in many cases, their sense of self. By the end of this video, you'll never look at those iconic images the same way again. The Golden Age studio system was less about nurturing talent and more about running a beauty factory. Executives like Louis B. Mayer, Harry Cohn, and Jack Warner didn't see actors as artists, they saw raw material. Material that could be cut, polished, reshaped, and if necessary, completely reconstructed to meet the rigid beauty ideals they believed audiences craved. For young actors desperate to escape poverty or obscurity, the deal was tempting. Surrender your face, your body, even your personality, and in exchange, you might get stardom. But the toll was devastating. Many emerged as screen legends, but behind the scenes they carried the invisible scars of a system that valued perfection over humanity. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the 15 most shocking transformations in Golden Age Hollywood, when so-called ugly ducklings were turned into the swans that defined cinema's most glamorous era. What they endured for beauty wasn't just shocking, it was inhumane. Rita Hworth. Rita Hworth's rise to stardom came at a devastating cost. She had to erase her very identity. When Margarita Carmen Cancino first stepped into Hollywood, studio executives didn't see the future love goddess. They saw a young woman whose Spanish heritage made her, in their eyes, unmarketable as a leading lady in 1930s America. Born to a Spanish father and an American mother of English-Irish descent, Margarita had striking features: deep olive skin, jet black hair, and a naturally low hairline. But in an era when Hollywood worshipped a narrow, whitewashed beauty ideal, those traits were deemed too ethnic for mass appeal. Columbia Pictures boss Harry Cohn recognized her natural grace and dazzling danceability, but before he would cast her in major roles, he demanded a complete physical transformation. What followed was nothing short of an act of erasure. For 2 long years, she endured agonizing electrolysis treatments, follicle by follicle, without anesthesia, to raise her hairline. Her rich black hair was dyed a fiery auburn red. Her olive complexion was lightened with layers of makeup. And finally, her name was stripped away. Margarita Carmen Cancino became Rita Hworth. The transformation worked brutally well. By the mid-1940s, she was one of Hollywood's most glamorous stars. Her sultry Life magazine pinup became so legendary that it was reportedly attached to the atomic bomb tested at Bikini Atoll in 1946. The woman once dismissed for looking too Mediterranean had become America's ultimate bombshell. But behind the glittering facade, the price she paid never stopped haunting her. In private, she would confess, "Men go to bed with Gilda, but wake up with me," a bittersweet nod to her most famous role versus the woman she truly was. Struggling with alcohol abuse and a string of failed marriages, Hworth could never fully reconcile the manufactured image with the vibrant young woman she'd been forced to leave behind. Her transformation remains one of Hollywood's most chilling examples of how the studio system could strip away ethnic identity to craft a marketable star, creating beauty by first destroying what made someone unique. Rock Hudson, from awkward truck driver to Hollywood's definition of masculinity. Before the world knew him as Rock Hudson, he was Roy Scherer Jr., a shy truck driver from Illinois with big dreams but no discernible talent for acting. In 1947, his first screen test for Universal Pictures was nothing short of humiliating. He moved stiffly, stumbled over words, flashed crooked teeth, and lacked any sense of stage presence. It took him 38 takes, 38, just to say his own name clearly on camera. And yet, talent scout Henry Wilson saw something others didn't: a towering 6 feet 5 inches frame, raw physical magnetism, and the potential to craft a star from scratch. "We'll teach him to act later, just sign him," Wilson told the studio. What followed was less acting school and more military boot camp for celebrity creation. Universal remade him from the ground up. Costly dental work gave him the flawless smile that would one day melt audiences. Voice coaches lowered his naturally high pitch and sharpened every syllable. Trainers sculpted his physique to near perfection. Even the way he stood, walked, and carried his shoulders was meticulously drilled until every movement radiated confidence. Early film roles kept his dialogue light, and the camera focused on his chiseled jaw, broad shoulders, and commanding height. Directors were told to frame him like a statue, angles that made him look less like a man and more like a dream. The transformation was beyond anyone's wildest expectations. By the mid-1950s, Rock Hudson wasn't just a star. He was the Hollywood standard for masculinity. He lit up the screen alongside legends like Elizabeth Taylor and Doris Day, charming millions as the ultimate romantic lead. But behind the perfect smile and the dreamboat image lay a cruel truth. While studios marketed him as the embodiment of heterosexual desire, Hudson was forced to hide his homosexuality in an era when exposure could destroy a career overnight. Publicity stunts were staged, and even a sham marriage was arranged to protect the image Universal had built. Rock Hudson's journey from clumsy truck driver to Hollywood's leading man is one of the most striking, ugly duckling to swan transformations in film history, and also one of its most heartbreaking. The same system that made him an icon also trapped him in a life where being himself was the one role he could never play. Marilyn Monroe, a studio's greatest creation. Perhaps no Hollywood makeover is more legendary or more misunderstood than the transformation of Marilyn Monroe. Before she became the world's most famous platinum blonde, she was Norma Jean Mortensen, a shy, dark-haired factory worker with a troubled childhood and modest dreams. When she signed with 20th Century Fox in 1946, studio executives didn't see a star. They saw an ordinary young woman with crooked teeth, a slightly rounded nose, curly brown hair, and a plain speaking voice. What followed was nothing short of a complete reconstruction. Piece by piece, the studio built a new woman, so much so that the Marilyn who emerged bore little resemblance to the Norma Jean who had first walked through their doors. Her transformation began with the hair, bleached to a shimmering platinum and styled into those soft, voluminous curls that would define her image. The bleaching was so frequent, every 3 days, that it damaged her hair to the point she later relied on wigs for many of her roles. Though Monroe publicly denied plastic surgery, biographers and industry insiders insist she underwent subtle procedures, reshaping her nose, refining her chin, perfecting her smile with dental work. Even her famous beauty mark was no accident. In early photos, it moved from place to place until the studio decided on its permanent, iconic spot. Her voice, too, was a creation. Monroe's natural tone was deeper, more conventional. But with the help of voice coaches, she developed the breathy, high-pitched delivery that became instantly recognizable, a sound engineered to be both innocent and seductive. Even her walk was choreographed. By shaving down one heel of her shoe, she achieved that mesmerizing, hip-swaying gait that seemed to defy gravity. Perhaps the most haunting part of her transformation was how deeply Monroe embraced it. Friends recalled that she could turn Marilyn on like a light switch, slipping from her natural self into the manufactured goddess at will. But over time, the boundaries blurred. The woman she had been was slowly consumed by the woman the world demanded her to be. The ordinary girl who was not beautiful enough for Hollywood became the very definition of beauty for generations. Yet the price was her true identity. In Marilyn's case, the ugly duckling didn't just become a swan. She became an entirely different creature, one born of lights, cameras, and the relentless machinery of fame. Judy Garland. Judy Garland, drugged into beauty. Behind the sparkle of the ruby slippers and the dream of Over the Rainbow lies one of Hollywood's most haunting transformation stories. When 13-year-old Frances Ethelgum, soon to be known to the world as Judy Garland, signed with MGM in 1935, the studio didn't see a rising star. They saw flaws to be fixed. Studio boss Louis B. Mayer reportedly called her "my little hunchback," and, even more cruelly, the ugly duckling to her face. They said her weight was a problem. Her nose, too wide. Her teeth, too childish. And so began a merciless campaign to remake a child into a marketable beauty, no matter the cost. MGM put Judy on a steady diet of amphetamines to keep her thin, planting the seeds of a drug dependency that would shadow her for the rest of her life. When she was just 16, filming The Wizard of Oz, Judy was forced into painful corsets to make her appear slimmer and younger. They capped her teeth, painted her face to create an artificial heart shape, and even inserted metal discs into her nose to physically alter its shape, a primitive and excruciating precursor to modern rhinoplasty that had to be adjusted between takes. And when her body began to mature, executives ordered her to wear binding garments to flatten her chest, trapping her in the image of a child the public wanted to see. Her diet was policed down to the last calorie. Studio staff followed her, monitored her meals, and made sure she never gained a pound. The toll was brutal. By her late teens, Judy was hooked on the studio's pep pills to stay awake and barbiturates to sleep. Her metabolism was wrecked. Her natural hunger cues erased. But perhaps the deepest scars were psychological. To be told she was ugly, even as the world adored her as the picture of innocence and beauty, created a tormenting contradiction that she carried for life. In the end, Judy Garland's transformation is one of Hollywood's darkest tragedies, a reminder that the qualities MGM worked so hard to suppress, her raw energy, her genuine emotion, her unique look, might have made her just as beloved had they let her shine as she truly was. Lucille Ball, from Too Plain to the Queen of Comedy. Before she was television's beloved queen of laughter, Lucille Ball was told, again and again, that she simply wasn't pretty enough for Hollywood. When she arrived in Tinseltown in the early 1930s, casting directors barely gave her a second glance. The verdict? Too plain. With her brown hair, freckled skin, and strong, angular features, she didn't fit the delicate, doll-like beauty standards of the silver screen. 4 years, she scraped by in small, forgettable roles, chorus girls, background extras, tough-talking side characters, while the ingenues of the day landed the glamorous leads. But Lucille wasn't about to let Hollywood's narrow definition of beauty write her story. Her transformation began with a bold choice, a head of fiery, orange-red hair. Originally dyed for her 1942 film Do Barry Was a Lady, the henna-based shade popped on black and white film and later became dazzling when television embraced color. MGM's makeup artists softened her freckles, refined her jawline, and highlighted her bright, expressive eyes. Costume designers built her a wardrobe that struck the perfect balance, glamorous enough for the screen, but still relatable to the everyday woman. But Lucille's real genius wasn't in changing herself to fit Hollywood, it was in flipping the script. Instead of hiding the features she was once told were too plain, she leaned into them. She turned her wide, alert eyes, elastic face, and physical clumsiness into her greatest comedic weapons. She exaggerated every quirk, every expression, until the audience couldn't take their eyes off her. By the time I Love Lucy hit the airwaves in the 1950s, Lucille Ball had built a new kind of stardom, one that didn't depend on fitting a mold, but on breaking it. She proved that true star quality isn't about perfect beauty, it's about unforgettable presence. The woman Hollywood once dismissed became an icon, rewriting the rules of what it meant to be beautiful, funny, and powerful. Lucille Ball didn't just transform from an ugly duckling into a swan, she redefined what a swan could be. Marina Dietrich, sculpted by shadows and light. When Marina Dietrich first stepped off the boat from Germany and into Hollywood, no one saw a goddess. Studio executives noted her pleasant features, a round face, soft contours, and a style that blended easily into the crowd, but nothing that screamed star. She was attractive, yes, but hardly the exotic sex symbol she would one day become. That transformation wasn't born from scalpels or drastic makeovers. It was forged in the alchemy of cinema, through her legendary collaboration with director Joseph von Sternberg, a man who didn't just film her, but reinvented her. Von Sternberg didn't change her face. He changed the way the world saw it. He devised entirely new lighting techniques just for her, shaping her cheekbones with shadows, narrowing her face with carefully angled beams, and painting her eyes with light until they shimmered like two hypnotic jewels on screen. He commanded makeup artists to arch her brows into a perpetual mask of mystery and sweep heavy shadows across her lids, creating a smoky, timeless allure that would influence beauty trends for decades. His signature move, a pinpoint light glinting in her eyes, gave Dietrich an otherworldly, almost dangerous gaze. On set, she wasn't just a woman, she was a spell. Dietrich herself was no passive muse. She studied her face obsessively, memorizing every flattering angle and refusing to be filmed from the wrong side. She even had her molars removed to sharpen her cheekbones, an extreme, irreversible sacrifice to her new image. Together, she and von Sternberg crafted not just a look, but a persona, androgynous, sexually ambiguous, and endlessly enigmatic. She wore men's suits with the same authority as a ball gown, blurring lines and defying expectations long before it was fashionable. The most striking truth about Dietrich's metamorphosis was how much of it lived in the lens. Visitors to the set often found themselves shocked. The woman in front of them was striking, yes, but human. Yet when the lights hit her just right, when the shadows fell into place, she became untouchable, a cinematic apparition. The woman once dismissed as ordinary became Hollywood's ultimate enigma, proof that beauty could be engineered, not just with paint and powder, but with light, shadow, and the magic of film itself. Joan Crawford, from ugly duckling to screen queen. When Lucille Ball first stepped into Hollywood in 1924, she wasn't exactly what the studio executives dreamed of in a leading lady. Her wide mouth, gums that showed when she smiled, and strong jawline were considered glaring flaws in an industry obsessed with perfection. MGM's publicity chief, Pete Smith, didn't mince words. He called hers the worst mouth in the business. Her transformation began with a name change. Lucille Ball sounded too much like Sewer, so MGM held a fan magazine contest and rebranded her as Joan Crawford, a name destined for the marquee. But the real metamorphosis went far beyond a new name. Dental work corrected her teeth and tamed that gum-revealing smile. Makeup artists invented techniques just for her. Most famously, the bold, Crawford mouth, with lipstick extended well beyond her natural lip line to turn her wide grin into a fashionable bow. Heavy rouge angled along her cheeks carved out dramatic cheekbones, and her naturally round face took on a sharper, more commanding presence. Her eyebrows, completely plucked, then redrawn into a dramatic high arch that became her signature. Her hairline was raised through painful electrolysis. She even retrained her posture and movements, learning to glide across a room like a queen. Crawford pioneered facial exercises to tone her features, repeating vowel sounds daily to strengthen muscles. Every morning, she plunged her face into a basin of ice water to tighten her skin, a ritual she continued well into her 70s. What set Joan apart was her adaptability. She didn't just keep up with changing beauty trends, she mastered them. From the flapper glam of the 1920s to the broad-shouldered power look of the 1940s, she reinvented herself with precision. When age threatened her stardom, she didn't chase youth. She leaned into her strong, angular features, transforming them into a mark of power. The transformation was so complete that when she returned to her hometown of San Antonio, childhood acquaintances didn't even recognize her. The girl once ridiculed for her looks became a symbol of Hollywood glamour, her beauty secrets filling the pages of women's magazines for decades. Yet behind the flawless image was a woman still haunted by the insecurities of her youth. Joan became obsessed with control, over her home, her surroundings, her every public appearance, with the same relentless precision she used to sculpt her face and career. The ugly duckling may have become a legend, but the shadow of who she once was never truly left her. Shelley Winters, from comic relief to Hollywood bombshell, and back again. When Shelley Winters first stepped into Hollywood in the early 1940s, she wasn't seen as a star. She was typecast as the funny fat girl, the plain friend, the sidekick who never got the guy. Casting directors barely looked at her for leading roles. Columbia Pictures head Harry Cohn didn't mince words. He told her she could either lose weight and bleach her hair blonde or settle for a lifetime of bit parts. But Shelley wasn't about to let Hollywood's narrow beauty standards bury her dreams. She launched one of the most dramatic self-transformations the industry had ever seen. She went on a grueling crash diet, dropping over 30 pounds in record time. Her rich, dark hair was stripped to a platinum blonde. She trained her posture and movements until she glided across a set like a goddess. She even reshaped her voice, softening it, making it breathier, to fit the era's ideal of femininity. The gamble paid off. By the late 1940s, Winters had reinvented herself into a sizzling blonde bombshell. She snagged the femme fatale role in A Double Life, 1947, and played the romantic lead opposite William Holden in The Glass Menagerie, 1950. Critics who once mocked her as too homely were now praising her glamour and sex appeal. But here's where Shelley's story takes a turn most starlets never dared to make. She walked away from the bombshell image she had worked so hard to build. For A Place in the Sun, 1951, she deliberately gained weight and embraced a more natural, even dowdy, appearance. The result? Her first Academy Award nomination. From that point on, Winters reshaped herself not for Hollywood's approval, but for the role she wanted, gaining or losing weight at will, slipping into beauty or plainness like a costume. She went on to win 2 Oscars for supporting roles that demanded she look ordinary, even unattractive, a sweet revenge for the young actress once told she'd never be beautiful enough for Hollywood. Shelley Winters didn't just survive the industry's ruthless beauty game, she mastered it, played it on her own terms, and then tossed it aside. The ugly duckling became a swan, and then, with complete confidence, chose to be herself again. Fred Astaire, the man too ugly to dance with beauty. When Fred Astaire first auditioned for RKO Pictures in 1933, the studio delivered one of the most famously wrong judgments in Hollywood history. His screen test report was brutal: can't act, slightly bald, can dance a little. One executive was even harsher, scoffing, big ears, bad jaw, no sex appeal. Physically, Fred was everything a leading man wasn't. Thin and wiry instead of ruggedly handsome. Ears that stuck out. A receding hairline by his early 30s. Slightly protruding teeth. He didn't fit the chiseled, matinee idol mold of the era. One studio head even sneered, "Who's going to pay to see this skinny, big-eared fellow dance with beautiful women?" But RKO had a problem, and Fred was the solution they didn't know they needed. Their rising star, Ginger Rogers, needed a dancing partner. So, reluctantly, the studio cast Astaire in a small role in Flying Down to Rio, 1933. They weren't sold on his looks, but they were desperate for his talent. That's when Hollywood began a transformation. Not of Fred, but of the idea of a leading man. Costume designers tailored his suits to broaden his shoulders and taper his waist, giving him a more commanding silhouette. Makeup artists and lighting experts worked to soften his hairline and disguise his jawline. But instead of forcing him into the mold of a conventional heartthrob, the studio leaned into what made him different. They built an image of elegance, charm, and effortless sophistication around him, qualities that had never before defined male stardom. The top hat, white tie, and tails became his armor, so iconic that men across America began to copy the look. And so, the man once deemed too ugly to dance with beauty became Hollywood's most graceful leading man, starring in a string of timeless musicals that reshaped the genre. By the 1940s, those flaws that once drew ridicule were now part of a signature style that defined sophistication itself. Fred Astaire's career proved something extraordinary. Hollywood didn't change him to fit the standard, they changed the standard to fit him. Veronica Lake, created by accident, destroyed by the image. When Constance Aukelman stepped off the train in Hollywood in 1941, she was pretty, yes, but hardly remarkable. No one could have predicted that this unassuming young woman would become one of film noir's most unforgettable femme fatale. Her transformation into Veronica Lake followed the standard studio playbook: a new name, bleached blonde hair, flawless makeup. But the feature that would etch her into Hollywood history, the legendary peekaboo hairstyle, wasn't dreamed up in a publicity meeting. It was pure chance. While filming I Wanted Wings in 1941, a strand of Lake's hair slipped forward, draping seductively over her right eye. Instead of calling "cut," director Mitchell Layson kept rolling, captivated by the air of mystery it created. That fleeting accident became lightning in a bottle. Paramount seized on the look instantly, branding it as her signature. Overnight, the peekaboo became a nationwide craze so influential that during World War II, the U.S. government actually asked Lake to change her style. Factory workers imitating her were getting their hair caught in machinery. The studio refined every inch of her allure: makeup that sharpened her heart-shaped face, lighting that deepened her hypnotic eyes, and voice training that turned her natural huskiness into a low, breathy, slightly dangerous purr. Even her petite 4 feet 11 inches frame was hidden from the public through clever camera angles and platform shoes. In films like Sullivan's Travels and This Gun for Hire, she became the definitive noir siren, a vision of danger wrapped in silk and shadow. But the magic that built her up also chained her down. The peekaboo wasn't just a hairstyle anymore, it was her identity. When she tried to change her look, audiences turned away. Maintaining the style became physically painful, causing constant headaches and neck strain. As roles dwindled, she began to resent being reduced to the woman with the hair. By the 1950s, the silver screen had forgotten her. She worked quietly as a bartender in New York, pouring drinks for patrons who had no idea the woman serving them had once been Hollywood's golden mystery. When a reporter recognized her in 1962, she dryly remarked, "I wasn't hiding. I was drying out." Veronica Lake's story is a Hollywood tragedy, a star born from a moment of chance, only to be trapped by it. The ugly duckling became a swan, only to discover that the beauty everyone adored came with a cage. Bette Davis. Bette Davis, the ugly duckling who weaponized her flaws. When Bette Davis arrived in Hollywood in 1930, she was no one's idea of a leading lady. Her unusual face, especially those large protruding eyes, was seen as a fatal flaw in an industry obsessed with symmetry and glamour. After her first screen test, Universal executive Carl Laemmle Sr. coldly remarked, "She has about as much sex appeal as Slim Somerville," referencing a gangly comic actor of the era. Another studio figure was even harsher. "Her eyes are too big. She looks like she's got a dead codfish in her face." Early on, the studios tried to fix her, hiding her distinctive features under standard makeup, soft lighting, and conventional glamour poses. But the results were forgettable. Her films flopped, and Warner Brothers was already considering cutting her loose. The turning point came not from erasing her so-called flaws, but from magnifying them. In 1934's Of Human Bondage, Davis, working with a bold makeup team, began to accentuate those enormous eyes, using dramatic shadows and eyeliner to make them a weapon. She built her screen persona not on delicate beauty, but on raw intensity. She wasn't afraid to look unglamorous, sometimes even grotesque, if the role demanded it. By the time she appeared in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, 1962, she had taken control of her image completely, painting on her own ghastly makeup to become one of cinema's most haunting characters, a washed-up child star lost in delusion. It was shocking, fearless, and unforgettable. What made Bette Davis extraordinary was how she turned Hollywood's beauty system inside out. She refused to let studios define her worth by traditional standards. Instead, she rewrote the rules, proving that talent, ferocity, and presence could eclipse mere prettiness. As she famously declared, "Until you're known in my profession as a monster, you're not a star." The woman once dismissed for her too big eyes, made those eyes her signature, a weapon that could burn through the screen and pierce straight into the soul. Bette Davis didn't transform from an ugly duckling into a swan. She created an entirely new species, and dared the world to admire it. Anna May Wong. Anna May Wong's rise in Hollywood is one of the most heartbreaking examples of beauty being weaponized against an actress's very identity. Born in Los Angeles to Chinese-American parents, Wong stepped in front of the camera as a teenager, quickly enchanting audiences with her elegance, intelligence, and undeniable talent. But behind the glamour, she was trapped in a cruel paradox. Hollywood told her she was too Chinese to play the leading lady. Its racist anti-miscegenation rules even forbade her from sharing an on-screen kiss with a white romantic lead. Yet when it came to playing authentic Asian characters, Wong was suddenly not Chinese enough. Those roles were routinely handed to white actresses in grotesque yellow face. The most infamous example came in 1937 with The Good Earth. Wong, the most famous Chinese-American actress of her time, was denied the lead role of Olan in favor of white actress Louise Rayner. Instead, the studio offered her the part of Lotus, the scheming, villainous concubine. She refused, famously saying, "You're asking me, with Chinese blood, to do the only unsympathetic role in the picture." The insult was staggering, an all-American cast in makeup portraying Chinese farmers, while the one real Chinese-American star was sidelined. Throughout her career, Wong was molded into something that wasn't truly her. Studio makeup artists tried to westernize her eyes, while costumers draped her in gaudy, Orientalist fantasies that bore little resemblance to authentic Chinese clothing. Directors insisted she speak with an accent, even though she was American-born and spoke perfect English. She was exoticized and erased at the same time, made too Western to be Chinese and too Chinese to be American. It was a beauty limbo that no woman could escape from without losing herself. Wong's transformation was not into a swan, but into a fantasy creature that existed only to serve Hollywood's contradictory and racist ideals. Yet, despite these humiliations, she carved out a remarkable career, appearing in over 60 films. Her grace and artistry shone through, even as the industry denied her the right to be fully herself. Anna May Wong's story is not just about an actress. It's about a system that demanded she erase her own reflection to fit a role she was never truly allowed to play. Humphrey Bogart, from rodent-like to romantic legend. When Humphrey Bogart first stepped in front of a camera in the early 1930s, no one in Hollywood saw a leading man. Warner Brothers executives sized him up, a wiry frame, a slight lisp, scars from his Navy days, crooked teeth, and what one casting director bluntly called rodent-like features, and decided he was destined for a career as a throwaway gangster, the kind who got gunned down before the credits rolled. For almost a decade, that's exactly what he played. Forgettable thugs, sneering heavies, men whose names audiences couldn't remember by the time they left the theater. He was kept out of promotional posters, overshadowed by the studio's more traditionally handsome stars. In an industry obsessed with symmetrical faces and charm boy smiles, Bogart seemed like a permanent outsider. Then, something unexpected happened, not to Bogart's face, but to Hollywood itself. By the early 1940s, as the world endured the brutal realities of World War II, audiences were no longer looking for polished perfection. They wanted grit. They wanted truth. And Bogart, with his world-weary eyes and voice like gravel over whiskey, had both in spades. His breakthrough came in High Sierra, 1941, where for the first time, he carried a film on his own shoulders. That same year, The Maltese Falcon sealed the deal. The studio made a few subtle tweaks, dental work, tailored suits that gave his narrow frame a broader silhouette, hats and combing tricks to disguise his receding hairline. But the real transformation happened behind the lens. Directors stopped trying to make him conventionally handsome and instead lit him like a man carved from shadow and experience, letting his intensity do the seducing. By the time Casablanca hit theaters in 1942, Bogart was 42 years old, an age when most actors were already seeing their careers fade. Yet here he was, not just a star, but a romantic icon. The man once deemed too ugly for leading roles had become the very definition of a leading man, not by fitting Hollywood's idea of beauty, but by rewriting it. His lined face spoke of danger and devotion, toughness and tenderness, all at once. Bogart didn't transform into a swan. He made the world see that swans could look different, paving the way for generations of unconventional heartthrobs, from Jack Nicholson to Benicio del Toro. In the end, he proved that true screen appeal isn't about perfection. It's about presence. Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo. Too ethnic. Too heavy. Too different. When Greta Garbo stepped off the boat from Sweden in 1925, Hollywood didn't quite know what to do with her. MGM executives took one look and panicked. Louis B. Mayer reportedly dismissed her as a big horse, while others complained her features were too strong, her nose too prominent, her build too sturdy, too masculine for the delicate, doll-like image they believed American audiences craved. The studio's first move was ruthless. They put Garbo on a strict diet to slim her naturally athletic Swedish frame. Makeup artists went to work, contouring her nose, defining her cheekbones, and reshaping her thick brows into the razor-thin arches of the 1920s. Even her name, Greta Lovisa Gustafsson, was cut down to the sleek, marketable Greta Garbo. But the real magic came from behind the camera. MGM cinematographer William Daniels developed a revolutionary lighting style just for her, a dreamy, soft-focus glow that made her seem almost otherworldly. It was so essential to her allure that Garbo demanded Daniels shoot nearly all her American films. Unlike most stars of the era, who were entirely remade by the studio system, Garbo fought to keep control of her image. She rejected extreme makeovers, refusing dental work to fix her smile, and chose simple, understated clothing over elaborate costumes. She leaned into her natural elegance rather than masking it with artificial glamour. What's remarkable about Garbo's transformation is that MGM didn't try to mold her into another cookie-cutter beauty. Instead, they built a new category of allure around her. Her too ethnic features became exotic. Her masculine strength became an air of mystery. Her differences became her power. By the early 1930s, the girl once dismissed as too heavy had become the divine Garbo, a star whose beauty was so luminous, so haunting, that it was considered almost supernatural. The woman they tried to change became the standard by which screen presence would be judged for generations. Garbo's story is a rare example of Hollywood's beauty machine doing the opposite of erasing individuality. It amplified it. And in doing so, it proved that sometimes the most powerful kind of stardom isn't about fitting the mold at all. It's about breaking it. Montgomery Clif. Montgomery Clif didn't just arrive in Hollywood. He changed the way the world saw male beauty. When he stepped off the Broadway stage and onto the silver screen in the late 1940s, the studio heads didn't know what to make of him. He wasn't a John Wayne or a Clark Gable, towering, broad-shouldered, and chiseled in the old-fashioned way. Clif was different. Slight in build, with what one executive dismissed as an odd, asymmetrical face. He carried an intensity in his eyes that couldn't be manufactured. The industry thought his unusual looks would trap him in minor roles. But director Fred Zinnemann saw what others missed, a haunted vulnerability that could burn through the screen. Cast opposite Olivia de Havilland in The Heiress, 1949, Clift brought a new kind of masculinity to Hollywood. Sensitive, layered, and deeply human. Audiences, especially women, were captivated. Clift refused to play the studio beauty game. No dental reshaping. No nose jobs. No bulking up in the gym to meet the real man standard. Directors learned to work with what he already had, an emotional rawness that, in post-war America, felt revolutionary. Films like A Place in the Sun, 1951, and From Here to Eternity, 1953, cemented him as a new kind of sex symbol, troubled, tender, and utterly magnetic. Alongside Marlon Brando and James Dean, he opened the door for a masculinity that prized authenticity over perfection. Then came the night that changed everything. In 1956, a near-fatal car crash left his face shattered. Surgery repaired much of the damage, but the left side remained partially paralyzed. It split his career into two distinct halves, before and after the accident. Yet, even in his later films, the scars only deepened his screen presence. His damaged beauty told its own story, proof that imperfection could be even more compelling than the flawless ideal. Clift's journey is just one of 15 dramatic transformations that reveal the brutal reality behind Hollywood's most glamorous faces. The studio system didn't just find stars, it built them, often through painful, dangerous, and soul-crushing processes. Judy Garland was fed diet pills until addiction consumed her life. Rita Hworth underwent electrolysis to erase her heritage. Marilyn Monroe was molded from Norma Jean into an icon she could never truly live up to. This wasn't just about makeup and lighting. It was about reconstructing people, physically, emotionally, and psychologically, until they fit a narrow, marketable idea of beauty. Many stars paid a price no one saw when the cameras stopped rolling. Some, like Bette Davis and Lucille Ball, fought to shape their own image, turning so-called flaws into assets. Others, like Clift and Greta Garbo, redefined beauty itself, proving that authenticity could outshine conformity. The truth is, the faces we call timeless were often products of an era's ruthless beauty machine, a reminder that beauty standards are not eternal truths, but cultural creations, shifting with each generation. So which transformation shocked you the most? Was it Marilyn Monroe's reinvention from Norma Jean? Rock Hudson's leap from awkward truck driver to Hollywood's ultimate leading man? Or Montgomery Clift's rise from too odd for stardom to redefining what a leading man could be? Let us know in the comments, and if you love uncovering the real stories behind the glamour, hit like, subscribe, and join us next time for more untold tales from Hollywood's golden age.